Hey everybody, welcome back to Video Game So today I'm going to trot out a very old intro when I did a retrospective on the Castlevania series back in 2020, basically when I almost started the channel. And that is because a new Castlevania game has been announced and nobody saw that coming whatsoever. It is absolutely amazing that we're going to be playing a new Castlevania game in 2026. So we're going to be talking about Castlevania Belmont's Curse today. And just so you know, it's basically a direct sequel to Castlevania 3, taking place 23 years after the events of that game. So it is kind of fun to slot this thing into that overall storyline. And I will say, as far as the trailer is concerned, we're going to be breaking it down today, going over what is in it and what isn't in it, talking about the art style, gameplay, and everything else we can see. But of course, it is a very short trailer, so we're going to have to kind of pixel peep to see what's going on. Before we get too far involved though, do me a huge favor, go down below, hit like and subscribe, and ring that notification bell. Definitely helps us out. And if you feel so inclined and want to support the channel, I got a Patreon link down below as well. But right off the top, at least we know this takes place 23 years after the events of Castlevania 3, and it is happening in Paris. You also saw that mini-map there. I'm assuming this probably isn't going to be kind of like a Castlevania Symphony of the Night setup with one master map. It kind of feels maybe more like it'll be stage-based. But again, we're just going to have to wait and find out about that. I don't know if this is going to be that Symphony of the Night level of amazing, or even how the game structure is going to work, but seeing a map means that there are going to be some alternate paths at least, and there's going to be some stuff to hunt around for that wouldn't actually be on the main course. Maybe it'll be more like a Rondo of Blood thing with some secret exits and everything else like that, because I would definitely like to have that kind of gameplay back in Castlevania, because there's so many incredible entries, but Castlevania is a franchise that Konami basically seems to have forgotten about. Yes, we had the remake of Haunted Castle last year, and that was just straight up a 10 out of 10, absolutely amazing reimagining of what I would consider to be one of the worst Castlevania games out there, Haunted Castle on the arcade. And again, it's one of those things, if you know me and you know the channel, you know I absolutely love my Castlevania. I have every single game ever released outside of Haunted Castle because that PCB is a fortune, and honestly to me nowhere near worth it. But outside of that, I've been playing this franchise basically since it's existed, so the idea that we're going to be playing a new game in 2026 is amazing. Now going back into the trailer, I think the number one thing that people are going to notice first and are either going to love or hate, because it is going to be divisive, is this is a completely new art style for the franchise. Yes, it is a 2D game. Looks like it has some Metroidvania beats to it, but obviously all of the characters are rendered in 3D, and it kind of almost has like a cel-shaded quality to it. I think this could look appealing, and again, seeing Death in there just like he looks in Rondo is going to be a fun time, but of course it isn't a 2D pixel art game, not like we got with the Haunted Castle remake. But honestly, at this point in time, it's really not surprising they didn't go for full 2D backgrounds and sprites, and I will say it'll have to take a bit to get used to that new art style, but off the top, there really isn't anything about it that makes me quote-unquote unhappy. Just getting a new Castlevania game in and of itself, I'm willing to play around with a new art style just so I can jump in and hopefully play another awesome game. Because again, we had a couple different games from Mercury Steam, the 3D games, a couple generations ago, but honestly a 2D Castlevania game, not something I really expected or had on my gaming dance card for 2026. And I really love that this follows Trevor Belmont and the events past Castlevania 3. It's basically a direct sequel, at least in the timeline is concerned. And that really is the fun thing about Castlevania as a franchise. There's so many different characters, so many different timelines. You could basically make infinite sequels between one game and the other. Because Castlevania 3, I would consider that the best Castlevania on NES. So the idea that we're going to find out what happens 23 years after that game will be fun. Now, are the events of Castlevania 3 going to inform the storyline of the new Castlevania? I really don't know. We'll just have to wait and find out. But because this game is coming out in 2026, honestly, it shouldn't be all that long till we actually get to find out what is going on. And that, again, is just an exciting time because I love everything Castlevania, even the janky games, and I've always maintained on the channel that Konami needs to remember they have some incredible franchises and stop making patch slot machines and start making video games again. We just recently got the Silent Hill 2 remake. Metal Gear Solid 4 is finally leaving the PlayStation 3, and now we have a new Castlevania game incoming, and that makes me very happy. Plus, listen to the music for just a moment, and I'll be right back with a lot more.
In the name of His Most Royal Majesty, by the grace of God, the King of France.
I mean, I'm down for that vibe in the music. It might not sound like Symphony of the Night or Rondo of Blood, but it does have that very impactful kind of orchestral soundtrack going on. Now, if we take a look at the map here, you're going to see a completely alternate route because we're clearly trying to get to the top of this map. So that does mean that there's going to be areas within Belmont's Revenge that aren't quote-unquote required. And that really is something I love about a Castlevania game, whether it's Symphony of the Night or Rondo of Blood. The ability to kind of traverse around and find things that might aid you in your quest or otherwise be fun to see, but don't really have a requirement as far as beating that stage or even the game. And I'm really hoping this thing comes with multiple endings like all of the best Castlevania games do, so you can go back in and get some more gameplay in. But one of the most noticeable things off the trailer is how Trevor Belmont just absolutely destroys things with this whip and just how many functions it has, because you are going to see a lot of whip swinging and a lot of different traversal methods. Kind of has a little bit of a Super Castlevania 4 vibe to it, but of course moving a lot faster. But when I think of whip swinging in a Castlevania game, Super Castlevania 4 is the one I think about. And you will see if you watch the trailer that Konami is not developing this game. They have a third-party developer, and that's what we saw with Haunted Castle as well. And it's one of those things, Konami doesn't really seem to be interested in quote-unquote making games anymore, unless they're in some sort of patch a slot machine in Japan, but it is good that they're letting other developers take on some of these franchises, because the reality is they have so many incredibly good games out there that could be revisited or could be given sequels, and if Konami's not interested in making them themselves, then obviously let external developers do it. Hire them or license the thing out and give us new games in the franchise. And my genuine hope is this thing sells really well and reviews really well, because then maybe we'll get more Castlevania. And it looks like there's going to be some great boss fights in the game as well, with a lot of different mechanics, so I hope this thing definitely has a good difficulty curve, and seeing death there definitely makes me happy. I would say my favorite boss of all of Castlevania is never Dracula. It is either got to be Legion or Death, or maybe sometimes the Dark Priest Shaft, depending on what game we're playing. But I am curious what you guys think of the art style. Leave me a comment down below and you tell me. Is it something that's appealing to you, or it's something that looks a little bit too far away from Castlevania? Now, of course, you can always change art styles, and I advocate for that kind of play around with the visual storytelling in a franchise like Castlevania, but it is one of those things I know some people just don't jive with that overall graphical style. But it's one of those things. Haunted Castle got an amazing 16-bit aesthetic remake, but getting a new Castlevania game, so long as we're getting it, I'm happy if they wanted to make that thing black and white 8-bit for all I care. Just give me more of this franchise, because I think there's so much more to be done, and so many more stories to be told in the Castlevania world, and that is why it's great to see that it's finally coming back. And I kind of feel like the Castlevania or Haunted Castle remake here was definitely a sign of things to come. And just seeing Death there with his bone scythe absolutely doing one of the attacks that you see in Rondo of Blood just absolutely puts a smile on my face. The one person I didn't see in the trailer I'm hoping will appear is the Dark Priest Shaft, just because I love that storyline. But if you think about the fact that this is basically a direct sequel to Castlevania 3, maybe it wouldn't make much sense storyline-wise. But again, it is a game about Dracula and vampires, so you don't really need to worry too much about the canon or the lore. You can kind of do whatever you want as far as the game is concerned. And even though it doesn't have any thematic tie to it, because it is taking place in Paris and Bloodlines goes through Europe, kind of has a little bit of a Bloodline flair to me as well. And that, at least for an announcement trailer, is a good combination of things that actually combine together. Stuff like Symphony of the Night, stuff like Rondo of Blood, Castlevania 3, and even Bloodlines. Those are the type of games I want this thing to be inspired by. And as far as whether it's going to have any Metroidvania elements to it, again, we're just going to have to wait and see. It seems like at least on that map, there are going to be different areas to explore, but we're really going to have to wait to get more information, because you could kind of assume anything based upon that trailer. It's kind of open to interpretation as to what's going on, but that really is fun, and I will say the trailer definitely got my interest piqued. And the hilarious part, basically within 4 minutes of that trailer actually being announced and put online, I had like 8 different Discord messages and like 4 Twitter inbox messages from viewers of the channel and people I know saying, "Did you see a new Castlevania was revealed?" And I did not know that, so thanks for sending me that memo, although I'm sure I would have found out within 15-20 minutes. But I'm really not surprised, because everyone like me out there saw that there was a new Castlevania game being developed, and they were absolutely insanely excited for the idea that we might be getting another game. And let's just hope that it's every bit as good as we feel like we should be getting, because it is the Castlevania 40th anniversary, so a new game in a franchise that's been around as long as I've been alive is 10 out of 10 fun. Now we just need to wait for Castlevania Belmont's Curse to actually release, and we have to hope that it's every bit as good as it could be in our imagination. The one thing we don't want is a disappointing Castlevania game that doesn't sell well, because I can't imagine Konami would ever trot the franchise out again if that was the case. Be sure that leave me your impressions down below. I want to hear what you're talking about as far as this game is concerned. I'll see you guys next time. Bye bye.